Okay. We're probably going to wait a couple minutes before we start the presentation because people are still coming in. And Kat is going to she's going to put some polls up so we can find out where you are and what you might know about Pika. Okay, maybe one more minute. Okay. So I'd like to introduce Arin Underwood. She works, she is a wildlife biologist for the Threatened, Endangered, and Diversity program at ADF&G. She got her Bachelor of Science degree at University of Alaska in Anchorage and did her Master's of Science in Norway. And she did a toxicology study on the Atlantic puffin. She now works with boreal birds and small mammals with the Division of Wildlife Conservation, as well as she does a lot of citizen science and outreach. Okay, this video is being recorded and it'll be ready in about a week, and we're going to put it on Vimeo and YouTube so you can share it with friends and family if you'd like, or if you want to watch it again. Pat will put links in to past videos, and she's going to put links to register for future presentations. We still have, I think, 2 more presentations, winter wildlife presentations. Okay. We ask that you put your questions in the chat, and if Arin hasn't already answered them, she can answer them at the end of her presentation. Okay, I'd like to introduce Arin. If you are ready to start, go right ahead, please.
All right, thanks, Marion. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, yes. Thank you. So thank you, Marion, for the introduction. And my talk tonight is on collared pikas, Alaska's alpine rock hoppers. So here we go. I'm just going to do a little overview of what I was going to talk about. And I was going to start with the Threatened, Endangered, and Diversity, or TED program that I work for, and why we study pikas. Then talk a little bit about the order that pikas belong to, the lagomorphs. Talk about the pikas in the world, and then zoom into the pika that we have here in Alaska, the collared pika, what we're doing to study them on the Collared Pika project, and then some of the goals that we have for future research. And then hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. All right, so the TED program, this is a Threatened, Endangered, and Diversity program. We are fish and game, statewide, non-game mostly, and we study species of greatest conservation need, or SGCN. And this is species like golden eagles in the bottom left there, little brown bats on the upper left, red knots upper right, and then lesser yellow eggs on the bottom right eggs there. And we study species that are undergoing some kind of decline in some way or under threat, like the lesser yellow eggs have undergone a big decline, little brown bats have too. And we do a lot of reviews for the Endangered Species Act, wildlife research, conservation action, and then outreach. So that is our program, and I will get into in a couple slides why pika are considered species of greatest conservation need and therefore a study subject. So getting into pika as a mammalian order. So these guys are in the order Lagomorpha, and there are 2 families in this. There are the rabbits or hares in the Leporidae, and then there's the pika in the Acatonidae. And there's about 109 or so species of lagomorph in the world. And for some context, there's 6,700 or so mammal species. 2,700 of those are going to be rodents, and about 1,500 are going to be bats. So there's not a huge amount of pika species in the world. And as I'll get into in a little bit later, the pika are also maybe about 30 species in the world compared to the rabbits and hares. So a little bit small. And lagomorph, the origin of that word is lago is Greek for hair, and lagomorph really just means hair form. Another animal that kind of shares that is the ptarmigan, whose genus is the lagopus, which just means harefoot because they have their little snowshoe feet with feathers on them. And these guys are not rodents. They're in a different branch from rodents, and they're differentiated from rodents mostly by their incisors. They have two sets of incisors, whereas rodents will have one. And so that's a common misconception with pika. They kind of look like they should be rodents because they're about the size of a hamster and they kind of look like a little mouse. But that's what's interesting about them is they're actually more closely related to a rabbit than any rodent. So they're Akatanidae for pikas. That comes from a Mongolian word for pika, akadono, and then pika comes from a Siberian word for pika. And they're also called the rock rabbit, the mouse hare, the whistling hare, or the piping hare, which if anyone is hiking out in the Alpine regions and they come across the pika, you'll know what I mean because they make this real high-pitched squeaking sound that is pretty cute and pretty funny. And rabbits don't do that. It's kind of a pika thing. And they're very herbivorous, and they differentiate themselves from rabbits on a couple of things. Mostly the rabbits will have really long hind legs. They're generally a lot bigger. They have much bigger litters. They're less vocal. They're not going to squeak at all. And they have a much more varied habitat type. Pika are going to be tiny. They're going to be smaller litters. They squeak a lot. Kind of. We have some videos I think Kat can put in the chat. I've been trying for forever to get a video of a pika squeaking in Alaska, and it's hard to catch. And then they also have a more isolated habitat type. They're going to be in like steppe tundra and alpine habitats. And they're also a little bit less fast than rabbits. So this is a quick graph that kind of shows their history. So you can kind of see here where they have common ancestors and then they branch off. This is the pika branch, the rabbit branch, so they kind of separate. And you can see there's a lot of pika species here. So this is, if you kind of go down, you can see this is like 15 million years ago or so. There's like a lot of different pika. There was maybe like 32 different genuses of pika. And now towards the end, you can see that green line dipping down, and now there's only the one genus of pika. So they've undergone a lot of change in the last few million years. And that's mostly because of the slow change of the climate caused a decrease in their food preference. And the rabbits and hares were a bit more suited to utilize that new food source, and pika weren't. So the rabbits stayed kind of diverse. You can see that these guys are all still around, while the pika kind of got a little bit smaller. And I'll kind of mention in a little bit here how pika all originated in Asia and moved into America via the Alaskan land bridge, Beringia. And let's see, I've got a couple of Alaska lagomorphs here. So we have only 3 lagomorphs in Alaska. We have the Alaska hare, the snowshoe hare, and our collared pika. This photo here is a snowshoe hare. And here is kind of a size comparison of all the lagomorphs because they are all vastly different sizes, which is kind of fun. So assuming this is a 6-foot tall person, the Alaska hare is going to be, they can stand like 3 feet tall next to this person. Snowshoe hare is 3 times smaller than the Alaska hare. And then the collared pika is not that much bigger than a hamster. So they have a pretty big size difference. So if you see any of the lagomorphs here in the state, you should be able to tell them apart just based on that alone. And the Alaska hare is actually cool because they are endemic to Alaska. Out of the whole world, they are only found in Western Alaska, and they're kind of roam the open tundra, and they're pretty hard to spot. But we actually have a Alaska hare research project that is also going on with the TED program. So that's another cool lagomorph that we're studying. So pikas of the world. Here we go. So these guys are the smallest member of the lagomorphs. They're about 6 inches long, 150 grams. I've got like a little stuffed one here that's pretty accurate to how they are. They kind of fit in your hand. They're really not that big. And there's about 30 or so species, depending on if you split it or not in the world. And almost all of those are going to be in Asia. There's only two in North America, the collared pika and the American pika. And almost all of them are going to be in alpine environments, talus slope, which is kind of boulder fields. These two on the top, large-eared pika and northern pika, are Asian species. The northern pika is found in Japan. And then we have the collared pika down there that is only found in our region of the world. And I have a quick map here that kind of shows pika migration. So this is like 50 million years ago. And for context, the big dinosaur extinction was about 65 million years ago. So this is not too far after that. You can see that there's this first big migration of pika across the land bridge into North America. 20 million years ago, there's like another big migration. And then 5 million years ago to about the end of the Ice Age, the pika are kind of settling down. And then the very bottom with the green, that is their current range. So you have all the Asian pika species hanging out in here, and then our two little North American pika here. So this is pretty long term, and it's kind of fun that they all had to cross through Alaska to get here, basically, the North American pika at least. So here's a zoom in of that range. So we have the red is our collared pika. They're going to be in the mountains of Alaska and then Yukon Territory, Northwest Territories, and just in the northern bit of British Columbia. And the American pika in blue there is going to be found in the Sierras, the Rocky Mountains, through Canada and the contiguous United States. And the separation of them, that little gap between the two species, is about 500 miles. So they don't really overlap that much. And this is what they look like. They look pretty similar sizes. Their coloration is a little bit different. They both live in the mountainous habitat. The collared pika are going to have a bit more of a limited range. American pika are far more spread out. But yeah, they're not too dissimilar. So zooming in now to the collared pika, the species that we have here. So these little guys are Acatana coloris, 160 grams, little hamster size. Sometimes I call them a mountain hamster just to kind of help people visualize them because that's pretty much what they look like. The Alpine boulder field is going to be that photo on the bottom where we have one of our technicians looking for pika, and it's just what it sounds like, just a big old alpine boulder field with lots of little nooks and crannies for the pika to hide in. And what's interesting about the lagomorphs is that they do not hibernate. It's another thing that differentiates them from rodents. And they're going to be awake all winter, just like the rabbits and hares that we have here, and unlike the marmot and the ground squirrel in the rodent order. And we don't have a lot of information on collared pikas. They're not super well studied compared to American pikas. And so this project is kind of a important step in uncovering a lot of information about them here in Alaska. They also have projects going on in the Yukon. And you can see this pika on the top has a big old mouthful of grass and leaves. And this is a pretty, if you like Google pika, this is going to pop up because it's extremely cute. I call it their groceries sometimes, where they're just kind of running around with, little bags of groceries and flowers and things. And this is because they're building what we call hay piles. And this is a unique pika thing that they do. So this is a hay pile. You can kind of see that under that rock, there's just all this vegetation has been smushed, and you can just see the pika right here with a little mouthful of flowers. And they're going to do this all over the boulder field. They're going to have like usually one big main hay pile that can be like 2 feet across, 2 feet deep. I've seen bigger ones under bigger rocks. And they sometimes they'll have one, sometimes they'll have a couple. I think the most I ever found when I was surveying for the hay piles was 12. And they spend all of their summer just filling that hay pile and building it because that's what they're going to survive on during the winter when they're not hibernating. So it's very important, and it's the most important thing in their lives in the summer is to build and maintain these hay piles. So what do their lives look like? So this is a baby pika here in this photo. They are born in the spring. They have litters of about 1 to 4. Usually there's like a gestation of maybe 30 days. They're weaned maybe a month afterwards. Usually 2 of them kind of make it to being weaned. They only have 1 litter a year, which is different than American pikas, which have about 2 litters a year. And then when they're a year old, they might have their own litter. And usually the breeding season starts in like May, and they have to wait for all the snow to melt off the ground before they can start haying. So they'll start haying and building their hay piles as soon as the snow is gone. They'll spend their winters under the snow, and they spend their whole winter basically maintaining their hay pile. They'll kind of rearrange it, make sure that it doesn't get ruined by water or that it doesn't get stolen by other pikas or anything like that. And they live about 3 or so years, but the oldest pika that we have on the site is that's confirmed this age is 8 years old, and that was the pika from my title slide. That was our 8-year-old pika. And these guys grow pretty fast. They have like a very short growing season, so they have to just grow really fast. I think it's one of the fastest among all the lagomorphs and faster than the American pika. They're like full size in not that long at all. And yeah, they'll kind of just spend their summers collecting food and being really territorial. That's what those squeaks usually are. It's like a territory thing or a warning for predators. And they will sort of chase each other and, you know, make sure they don't steal each other's hay piles and scold one another or just kind of run around. And they have a lot of personality for little mountain hamsters. They're pretty funny to just watch. So I've been talking a little bit about their behavior. This is sort of what that looks like if you are out in the mountains and you are just watching the pika. And these are all official scientific terms. We call this the loafing period. This is when they look like a potato on the top there. That's the potato loaf. This is the loafing when they're a sausage. When it's a baby pika, like this little guy, then I call it a dinner roll because they're just a little bit more round than the adults. Then they have their calling where they're going to be squeaking out on the rocks in the second photo. Then they have rock hopping where they're just zooming around, looking for things and maintaining their territory and keeping an eye on their neighbors. And then they're haying where this little guy, well, they're just going to be fetching food. And then we have this next video I was able to take. Let's see if this works. So this is just foraging. So that's like the last behavior that they have. And this is when they'll just go and collect some snacks and they'll just sit there and, you know, slowly chew on it. And this pika was pretty cute because I was out in the mountains and I was doing some surveys and this pika got like 5 feet away from me. And so I was able to get some kind of nice footage of it just foraging, which was really nice. But they're not too, you know, afraid of humans because when they're in the rock slope like that. Okay, I'm going to shamelessly show another cute pika video. When they're in the rocks like that, they can hide pretty easily. So if they feel at all threatened, they can just run right back under the rocks and they're safe from anything big. So they usually don't forage farther than like 10 feet or so from the rocks because that's their safe haven. Unless the predator, they have a couple predators that can follow them into the rocks, which I'll get into, but humans aren't obviously not one of them. So they're usually pretty chill around humans, which is nice. This is kind of the ecosystem that they live in. This is the Alpine ecosystem. And we have a lot of ptarmigan up there. It's white-tailed ptarmigan in the lower left, also rock ptarmigan. There's a lot of hoary marmot, Alaska marmot in the interior, ermines, raptors, a lot of songbirds. I see gray-crowned rosy finch out there, American pipit, northern wheat-ear, golden-crowned sparrow, a lot of ground squirrels, occasionally some foxes. And you can see the upper left there, that is a ermine, and that is going to be their main predator, mostly because they are small enough to follow the pika into their dens. And martins can also hunt the pika. So you can see the ermine in that picture actually has a juvenile pika that it caught while we were out there. So they are successful hunters. And like I said, only about half of the litter makes it to adulthood. So, you know, it's rough out there. And this is a game camera footage of a pika den. So you can see this is one of our tagged pika. And this is their hay pile on the bottom right there that they are protecting. And this is just kind of showing the activity in the hay pile. So here's a ground squirrel coming through. They steal from the hay piles a lot. Marmots also steal. And then here's an ermine just running right through the pika den, looking for the pika. So that's kind of what they are always on the lookout for. And this is kind of like a little time-lapse video, but you can just see how many times in just, you know, this one little period that the pika and the ermine are just going back and forth. So it's sort of a constant, for the pika at least, they have to just be constantly on the lookout for ermine or anything that might mess with their hay pile. And now it's nighttime. Pika is still hanging out, still making it. Just checking on the hay pile. The hay pile is the most important thing. I've had there's a couple of instances where like a marmot has gone through and like eaten an entire hay pile or something, and it's like, oh, it's pretty sad. But as long as it's not too late in the season, they have a chance to build it back up and fix it. So it just depends. So I mentioned before that the TED program studies SGCN, or species of greatest conservation need. So what makes a pika an SGCN? This is mostly because they're considered vulnerable to changing vegetation and climate. They are potentially vulnerable to alpine shrub expansion and the warming climate. And so there's just kind of a need for information on how resilient they might be to these changes across their range and sort of across a gradient. And American pika are affected by this. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it's something that we want to look into. American pika are considered sensitive to climate and vegetation change in alpine habitats. So here is some climate modeling that shows suitable pika habitat. And you can see going from left to right, the warmer the model gets, the more the suitable pika habitat shrinks. So this is just one of the reasons why the pika are sort of concern and why we're looking into them. And this is potentially what that might look like for the pika. So you can see this positive, negative. These are positive or negative for the pika. So a warm winter would have fewer cold days. That would be good for pika, but there would be less insulating snowpack. The snowpack that buries the boulder fields makes a big difference in temperature underneath it. And so if there's less snowpack, that's actually worse for the pika. And then another negative is if there's increased rain, because that water can get under the rocks and mess with their hay pile and maybe freeze over it and stop their access to it. And then if there's an earlier onset of spring or a warmer summer, potential positive, longer growing season, but then the plant, the timing of the vegetation coming and going could change. So that's kind of uncertain. And then a negative is that they could get heat stress. And then because of that, reduced foraging time, because we have found in our studies that they don't forage as much when it's pretty hot out. So these are all just kind of some positive, some negative, just predictions for how this might affect collared pika. And then for shrub expansion, they could get new food sources, good, but then fewer plants that they like, and then loss of their general habitat, and then loss of, and then, the predators have more places to hide, so not good. So yeah, all things that are potentially of concern with the pika. And then another thing with them and with alpine species, and this has happened to American pika too, is that since they're already so high up in the elevation, if things change too much more, there's not really anywhere for them to go. American pika have in the past been seen at like lower altitudes, and they've been kind of pushed up over time. And so there's a certain point where there's not really anywhere else for them to go. So that's kind of why it's a concern if they start moving away from these things. And so I've mentioned shrub expansion. So this is kind of a picture showing that. You can kind of see in this red circle. This is a picture of shrub expansion in Denali National Park. And you can sort of see how the trees and the green shrubbery have sort of moved in on this talus habitat and how that could affect the pika there by having, more predator refuges and things like that. So all things to, keep in mind during our study. And our main question is, how will changing alpine ecosystems affect the collared pika moving forward? And that is what led to the Alaska Collared Pika project with Fish and Game. And our main goal there is to understand how pikas will respond to changing ecosystems in the future by looking at the health of pika populations now across a gradient of environmental conditions, which means we have to find different sites that have these different conditions so we can compare them. So the Collared Pika project, this started in 2018. It's still ongoing, and we are addressing these objectives. So that would be survival. So that's conducting a mark recapture study by tagging pikas. I'm sure you've seen that by now. The pikas have little tags on their ears, and I'll go into why we do that and how it's helpful for the study. We're looking at their stress levels across an elevational gradient. We are looking at their diet preferences, how selective they are, what the nutritional quality is. And then we are doing surveys across different populations to look at their abundance over space and time. And then we're also doing some behavior studies, which we've finished. So we're able to kind of see if they forage more when it's warmer out, which they don't, how early and late they stay, and how they kind of might react to just those daily changes. So the diet studies and the behavior studies are done, and the stress studies are done, and the surveys and survival are ongoing. So these are our sites. We have South Central here. And I'm not really going to talk about the Stees site. I'm going to mostly talk about these three. So these red dots are the tagging pika sites for checking survival, and the black dots are abundant surveys. And our team did not do these ones in the top. That was the University of Alaska Anchorage. So I'm mostly going to focus on the ones that we were involved in, which is Denali, Paxson, and then South Central. And all of these sites have different elevation, different shrub communities, and different seasonal weather so that we can kind of compare them. Paxton there is going to be on the Denali Highway. Snowhawk Valley is going to be on Jay Bear, and then we have Hatcher Pass just north of Anchorage. So the field season for pika is a pretty good time. You can kind of see from these pictures, it's like a really beautiful environment. I'm sure, you know, a lot of folks have been out hiking in the mountains. These are just a couple of pictures from our field season. That is Snowhawk Valley there. There's Denali Highway, Snowhawk, Hatcher Pass. So we're all just kind of out there and climbing over the boulders and rocks and looking for the pika, and there's lots of marmot and birds around. So it's a pretty fun field crew to be a part of. And what we are mostly doing out there is resighting pika. So here's those little ear tags that I mentioned. Let's see if you guys can see this on my screen. This is what we practice on. This is a little stuffed pika, but you can kind of see the little ear tags that they have there. And then they have little numbers on the back, and these are the same ear tags that these pika are going to have. And the colors are specific to individual pika. So this guy here has right ear orange, left ear blue, and he's going to be the only pika in that area with that color combination. So if you resight them with binoculars and you can say like, oh, I see the right ear is orange and the left ear is blue, then you can look up in the notes that tagged pika, and we'll know exactly who it is, how much they weighed. We usually have a genetic sample from their fur, and we're able to kind of keep a track of them. So we have tagged about 205 pika across all these sites since 2018. And if we see the same pika from year to year and we're able to recognize them by their tags, then we know that they made it, and we can keep track of their survival. And that's how we know that old pika, the 8-year-old pika from my opening slide, that's how we know it's the same pika, because they have the same ear tags and they're in the same area. Pika are very site loyal. And that pika was originally tagged as a juvenile when the project first started. So it's pretty fun to go back there every year and see that they're still going strong. So we also, I like to mention that we give them names based on their ear tags. It's kind of based on the colors. So this guy, right ear orange, left ear, I think it was white. That would be creamsicle. If they have double yellow ears, then they're Pikachu. If they have yellow and red, then they're Pooh Bear. Blue and green is blueberry. So they get different little names. It helps to keep track of them sometimes beyond their ID numbers. So how do we catch them? Here we go. So here's a picture of their the trap that we use to catch them. So you can see this is kind of a small little trap, and it has a pressure trigger kind of right there, that little silver plate. And what we do is we stuff these traps with the food that we know that they like based on our diet studies. Here's a little video of me trying to capture a pika. And this can be, you know, it depends on the pika. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes they're a little bit of pain. So you'll stuff the trap with leaves, and then you'll kind of make a little welcome mat like I've laid out here for this pika to sort of pique their interest. And they'll do what this pika is doing. They'll kind of come down and investigate, maybe take a little bit of it back to their den. And what you want them to do is feel comfortable enough to see all of the vegetation in the trap and go in there, and then step on the pressure trigger and the door will close behind them, and then we can go in and sort of safely take them out. We put them in a little net bag so they can't escape, and then through the net bag we can kind of tag their ears, take a little fur sample, get their weight, and then let them go again, and then they're all fine. So sometimes it can take like hours and hours of watching a trap to catch them. Sometimes they go in right away, and then you catch the same pika like 4 times because they're just trap happy. Sometimes you never catch them, especially if they're juvenile. The juveniles are a little bit more wary. I don't think I ended up catching this pika. I think I just got a lot of nice GoPro footage of it, and then it just never went into the trap. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. It's that's how it is in the field. Little guy. So, how do we know what they like to eat so that we can bait their traps? So, investigating the diet of the collared pika. Here's another hay pile. So we wanted to know how broad their diet was. Were they generalist? Were they more specific? Did they only want to eat certain things? You know, what do they specialize on? Do they eat shrubs? So we found their hay piles. They're pretty easy to find. Like this one, you know, it's just kind of out in the open. It's just all this, you know, if you kind of look under a couple of rocks, you can usually find some, especially if you hear the pika squeaking, and so you know you're in the right spot. And then we just sampled from the fresh hay piles and looked at the plant species to see what it was. So here's the results of that study. So this bar graph here is the species that we took out of different hay piles. So this is Snowhawk Valley, and this is the proportion of different food items from different hay piles. So you can see the graminoid there, that's grasses. Forb is going to be flowers, and then shrub is going to be like tundra and willow, like blueberry and crowberry. So Snowhawk Valley on J-Bear has mostly almost half grasses. And this all kind of changes depending on what's available. So it's not necessarily like what the pika wants, it's just what is there. And so it sort of shows the different habitat and based on the different habitat the pika is in, what they end up choosing. So these Snowhawk pika are going after mostly grasses because that's what's there. This is the Hatcher Pass pika. They're going to go after mostly the willow and short shrubs there with a little bit of flowers, but not as much grass. And then the Denali Highway Paxson pika are also going to go after shrubs and flowers. And we know that this is what they like based on our cafeteria trials. So this is an example of a cafeteria trial. It's not too complicated. We mostly just stuck different food types in these different tubes and then watched the pika on a camera to see which one they preferred. And we saw that they really like fireweed leaves. They love flowers, and they like willow, and they like burnet leaves. So they didn't love, I mean, they'll take grass, like they're not going to ignore it, but they're more likely to choose those other things. And they do that because they choose plants based on if their tannin concentrations decrease after they are stored for a long time. So they avoided grasses, and then they avoided things like blueberries and stuff. And it's kind of related to the nutritional quality of the plant and then how well they store over time. Because the pika are going to rely on this food like the entire winter. So they need to make sure that it dries properly and then it maintains its value even after it's dried. And tannins, I've mentioned that a couple times. So tannins are kind of a natural defense against pests that's found in a lot of plants. It's in like red wine and tea and bark and fruit. If you ever see some of those wetland waters that are sort of tea colored, that's because of tannins. And so that's kind of what the pika are looking for, plants where that will, decrease over time. So here's a little graph that kind of shows that. We have on the bottom, we have their digestible protein, and then on the other axis, tannins. And so their ideal food is high in protein and low in tannins. And so there's not really anything that's super close to that, but willows and forbs or flowers are going to be the closest and the best that they can do for what they want. So grasses have like a little bit of protein, but not as much as willow and flowers. And their tannin is off. So this is that's why they're choosing willows and flowers. So they are going to consume all of this hay pile after it has already dried. So what they're not foraging on the day of, like in those other videos, they're just going to keep track of in their hay pile and then eat it in the winter when it's all dry. So here's another graph that kind of shows how you can see on the far right there, the salix plants, that's going to be willow and flowers. And then on the far left there, like Vexillum uliginosum, that's the dwarf blueberry. So this is just their preference, and which is nice to know because then we can bait their traps with what we know they like. We always go and pick fireweed leaves and willow leaves for our pika traps when we go out there because we have our cafeteria trials that said that that's what they prefer. So the takeaway is that they don't necessarily avoid shrubs, but they prefer willow and forbs, and they'll kind of avoid dwarf shrubs and grasses if they have a chance of the willow and flowers. And then they choose plants that have improved quality over time. So the tannins go down and the nutritional value stays the same or better. So that's what they're after, and they're kind of selective of their food depending on what's available to them. So this is just another cute little video where we have some of the leaves that we know they like out to kind of see what they choose. And this pika is very happy about it. This is also a tag pika. You can see his little silver numbers behind their ears. That's how we know who they are. And they just, pick up this huge bag of groceries in their mouth, even though they're just so tiny, and take it back to their hay pile. So they're pretty cute to watch, and they're very busy and efficient, and they will make these, massive hay piles from this. So they're pretty cool little guys. And then the stress study. So we're looking at the different stress levels of the pica. So the physiological stress is measured by stress hormones in their feces. And we have found in, or other studies have found in America pica that in poor habitat quality, the higher the stress hormone amount is found in the feces. So for the pica, all we had to do is collect it while we were tagging the pica to measure this. And it's kind of similar to the American pica. So we have our three sites here. We have Denali Highway, Paxson. There's a high shrub diet. There's kind of a moderate shrub diet in Hatcher Pass in the middle there. And then Snowhawk on Jay Bear on the far right is mostly grasses because it's a pretty barren environment. You can even see where our technician is walking there. It's like mostly just lichen and moss and rocks. And there's really not much. There isn't any willow or fireweed there. I think we had to pick it on our way up there. So as a reflection of that, the pica in Snowhawk were a bit more stressed out because the food quality was lower and harder to find. But the ideal place for them to be was Hatcher Pass. That's where all the good food was, where the willow and the flowers were. So they like it in Hatcher Pass. And this is kind of a summation of what predicts colored pica density and just general population health. So elevation, latitude, aspect is the compass direction, which if they're facing the sun or not, they like to facing the sun a bit more. What the vegetation was, the health and density of that vegetation, and then temperature and rain and or snowfall. So these are all things that kind of predict how well the pike are doing at all of our field sites. And in general, if there's a good amount of precipitation for the vegetation to be healthy, pike like that. They like the cool summers so that they can forage safely without getting heat stress. They like the winters that are warm enough that they don't get stressed out by the cold, but not like so warm that it causes rain to come in and mess up their hay piles. And then if there's areas with high plant productivity, they like all that. So yeah, this is kind of a reflection of this. And like I said, Hatcher Pass is doing pretty good. The Hatcher Pass pica are pretty happy with their situation, and they have pretty good densities. And yeah, the other pica have different problems that they're dealing with. So, but it's nice to have these results because you can kind of see how the different aspects of each site and how they're different from each other affects the colored pica population health and abundance. So in general, the pike have a pretty flexible diet. They have their preferences, like they would like to have the willow and the flowers. I believe that's willow leaves in this pike's mouth here, but they can move on to other things if they want to. They're not like specializing only on these leaves. So they can cache shrubs like the willow, and they appear to kind of select plants based on how well they store over the winter and if their nutritional quality is maintained, and then their densities are correlated with climate and productivity. So they are kind of potentially vulnerable to rising summer temperatures, and they might be more resilient to climate change than maybe was originally thought. But there's a lot of different mechanisms that are affecting them, and so this kind of continued monitoring that we're doing is
Arin,
all more
can
information.
I
Yeah,
interrupt for a second? Hi,
yeah,
everybody.
sure.
It looks like my state of Alaska, it's shutting down my computer in about 5 minutes. So if we lose you all, try to jump back on again so that she can finish up.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I should be just a few minutes from the end here, so hopefully I'll aim for that. So in the future, we are looking at, we have this baseline of data now with all of our abundance surveys for pica. So now if we repeat these surveys like 10 years from now, we'll be able to compare it to what we have already done and see if there's any changes. So that's a potential future research we can do, looking at their winter conditions, how that might affect them. We're kind of already working on the stress response to heat with a grad student. So this is all stuff that's kind of either in the works or something that can be done in the future. So yeah, that's most of our pica project and what we're working on. And real quick, we have some partners. Like I said, UAA did a lot of surveys. JBER helped us with a lot of surveys. Colorado Mesa University, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And if you would like to follow the pica project or any of the other SGCN projects we have with raptors and bats and shorebirds, We have a Facebook and an Instagram, so you can follow us on there. I usually post about what we're up to, so I'll start posting shorebird stuff in May and pika stuff in August. And fortuitously, we also have this year's conservation stamp, which is a lagomorph, the Alaska hare, the that giant endemic to Alaska hare that I was showing in the size comparison chart. The purchase of these stamps supports Fish and Wildlife research and education in Alaska. We have a QR code to the stamp there. I think Kat is going to put a link in the chat as well. And then also that same QR code there. And hopefully before we get kicked off, we can do a few questions.
Hello. I don't think we're going to get kicked off, but you might just lose me. And if you lose me, maybe Kat can take over the asking the questions.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any questions yet.
Looks like there's a couple in the chat. Let me see. Yeah,
Arin,
let me see.
Thanks for your presentation. We've got a couple questions. So Dave was asking, when you do mark recapture, is there a way to know if you are sampling only trap happy pikas? Similarly, is there a way to know if recaptured pikas are sampled from the same population as the marked pikas?
Yeah, so we only really need to capture the pika once. So even if they are trap happy, we can usually, as long as we're able to sort of trick them initially, which we can do by, we'll sometimes leave the traps out overnight with the doors wired open so that they cannot close. But then the pika kind of get used to going in and out of the trap and nothing happens. And they're like, okay, this is safe. And then the next day we'll activate the trap. The pika will go in like it's been doing all day, and then the trap will suddenly close behind them. So we can kind of trick them into going into the trap, and we don't like need them to be trap happy. It makes it easier, but we have ways to also catch the more cautious and I don't want to say smart pika, but you know, the ones that are more less likely to get caught. So it's kind of rare that we'll catch a pika and then an hour later they'll go into a trap that's close by. That doesn't happen too often, but you know, yeah, there's ways to trick them a little bit. And what was the second half of that question?
Yeah, so they were asking if there is a way to know if recaptured pikas are sampled from the same populations as the marked pikas.
Yeah, the mark recapture is we don't always we only would really actually recapture them if their ear tags were lost in a way that it made their identification hard to find. So if we have two pikas with like left ear orange and then one of them loses the other tag, then it's kind of hard to know who they are. So we're really the resighting them with the binoculars and seeing the color tags. That is all we actually need to kind of make the you know, the recapture to know their survival. So the actual recapture is only if their ear tags are damaged, and just resighting their tags is all we really need for our survival study.
Great, thank you. Emily has a question. How many pika are there in Alaska?
Oh, you know, that's a good question. I don't know if we have really good numbers on that because they're a little bit understudied and in these kind of hard to reach places. So I don't really have a number in my head, but we've captured about 205 since 2018 over those different regions. There's in like one colony, there could be like, you know, 10 or 15 pika. And it's kind of also isolated to the rock slide. So they don't really move very far in their life, and they're very territorial and they're very site loyal, and they'll kind of stay in the same place they were, the same colony where they were born for their whole life. So, you know, they're kind of just, yeah, isolated little pockets. And so hard to say exact population, but you know, most colonies have, you know, maybe 15 or 20 pika, depending on how big the rock slide is. Yeah, good question. Yeah, that's something I'd be interested to know in the future.
Thanks, Erin. Jackie has a question. How many offspring do they have?
Yeah, so they have about 1 to 4 on average, and then generally maybe 2 will make it to adulthood after being weaned, and they only have one litter a year, so they don't have too many offspring. In compared to rabbits and hares, which have way more offspring. So that's another difference between them.
Barbara's got a question. They are asking, are pika solitary?
Yes, they are pretty solitary actually. They'll kind of have their own territory, and then they'll defend it pretty well. If any other pika sort of, get on their territory, start messing with their hay piles, they will chase them off and they will squeak at them, and they're pretty cute. Their squeaks are very like this kind of indignant little get out of here kind of thing. So they're sort of like a little bit monogamous. They'll kind of have their mate, but in general, they maintain their own hay piles and just kind of have their own little grumpy territory that they defend.
Great. Anna's question, she's saying, do we know why the population is lower in Denali?
Yeah, so it's probably a combination of those environmental factors. So there's the different food availability. So I guess there's maybe like lower quality access to like willow and flowers, which is what they want. And then there's the elevation difference and the different predators. So yeah, it's probably just a combination of different like environmental aspects. Like the that one slide I had that summarized the pika density that was like compass direction, vegetation, and elevation, precipitation. So it's probably a combination of all of those things in Denali that aren't quite exactly what the pika need to thrive, whereas Hatcher Pass is just more closer to what they want.
Matthew is asking the average life expectancy and do they mate for life?
Yeah, so average life expectancy is probably 3 years old or so, not terribly long. It's it's rough out there. Like I said, that 8-year-old pika is the oldest ones that we've found. But if I found like a 5-year-old pika, I'd be like, whoa, I can't believe they made it to 5. That's pretty impressive. So yeah, not terribly long lifespan. And I think for the mate for life, yeah, there's not too much research on that, but I think what's suggested is that they will sort of stick with the same mate, just because their populations are so isolated. There's not a lot of options, unless something happens to the mate or they or get aren't healthy or anything like that. So I think they'll generally kind of hang out with the same pika, but not 100%. They're a little bit flexible.
Matthew Stone is asking, do you worry about predators being harmed by eating the ear tags of captured pika?
Not really, because they would have to sort of swallow the head to get at the ear tags. And that picture that I got of the ermine eating the pika, it actually like grabbed the pika in front of us and then dragged it under a rock and ate it. And they don't really, they kind of just like eat the body and like where all the meat and stuff is, and they kind of leave the head alone. So yeah, we're not too concerned about that.
Brianna is asking, what do they sound like when they're threatened?
Yeah, so they have that little squeak that they do. Kat probably has that video. I've been trying to get a video of them squeaking for years, but they never do it on cue. I have so many like pictures or videos of just like watching the pika and waiting for them to squeak so I can get it on camera. And of course, they never do it. But it sounds very like, kind of like a little indignant like squeak sound. So they do it to protect their territory, to tell other pika to bug out. And then also if they see a predator like an ermine or a raptor, they'll squeak to warn everyone. Marmots and ground squirrels live in the same habitat, and they will also give a little squeak if they see a predator. Usually if I hear a marmot do like a little whistle warning, it means there's some kind of raptor above us. And the pika will listen to that too. They'll all kind of listen to each other's warning signals and go hide in the rocks.
Awesome. Thank you. Judy has a question. Are they coprophagic?
Coprophagic. I don't know if I know the exact one of that. Let me see. Consumption of feces. I don't know. I haven't seen them do that on the game cameras or anything, but anything, yeah, maybe, but I'm not sure. I've never seen them do that.
Robin Moore has a question and a comment. Have you done any studies on winter activity under the snow? Back in the mid-1980s, I did my master's thesis on seasonal and daily activity patterns of pikas and did follow their activity over 24 hours during the summer, fall, and winter with radio collars. I found that they were active under the snow and did venture out from the rock slide short distances to forage when temperatures were not too cold. Do you know what these pika are doing under the snow?
Yeah, that's very cool. Oh, that's neat that you got to see that. Yeah, so we have some game cameras that we've put in their hay piles over the winter to find out what they are doing under the snow. And we found that they spend a lot of their time maintaining their hay pile. So they'll move it around, they'll rearrange it, if there's anything that's being crushed, they'll kind of bring it out. And they kind of just try to make sure that it's all uniformly like being dried and that it's kind of, maintaining its quality as a food source and it's not getting like smushy or gross or anything like that. So they spend a lot of time housekeeping with the hay pile. And then if any other pika come near their hay pile, they'll kind of chase them off. So they spend, a lot of their time just defending their hay pile and rearranging it and making sure it's all ship shape. I think I've heard some people say that if it is like a little bit warmer out, maybe they'll venture out from under the snow and kind of, hang out on a rock. I've definitely been out there in the kind of early winter when there's snow on the ground, but not deep snow. And I found pika tracks going through the snow where they've kind of been going out and looking around at stuff. So yeah, I guess that's most of what they do, just housekeeping and defending and hanging out.
Brianna has a great question. What diseases do they suffer from?
That is a great question. They don't have like rabies or anything. We're not really concerned too much with handling them. So nothing's really come up specifically with the diseases. So yeah, I don't have a specific answer for that. Nothing that's dangerous to humans, at least, I suppose. Yeah, they sometimes have like fleas and such on their fur when we capture them, but I've never seen one that was sick or anything.
I'm not seeing any further questions so far.
Cool, thank you.
Oh, we got another one from Judy. Have you observed a population cycle like hares? Oh, that's good.
No, I don't think so. I think that's more, yeah, like kind of tied to like the lynx hair relationship, but we haven't noticed any kind of like cyclic like population grow and dip. It kind of seems to kind of stay steady unless there's any kind of environmental change. So, like if there's like an avalanche or something that could wipe out hay piles, then maybe the population will dip. But their populations are so kind of isolated that they're just mostly just vulnerable to the environmental change. But there's nothing similar to that.
The questions have seemed to slow down. Does anybody have any further questions? Oh, Robin says the pika has two types of feces, a soft form and a pellet type like rabbits. From what I know, the pikas are copographic and ingesting the soft feces.
Oh, okay. Learned something new. Very cool. Oh, you've seen them at the Lake Lodge, the pika? Very cool. Yeah. Usually if I'm in any kind of like alpine area in the rocky area, I'll kind of listen for the little pika squeak. And sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. But usually that squeak is a pretty good indication. They're the only thing that sounds like that out there. I believe the slideshow should be on YouTube after this, right, Kat?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, this will be available in about a week or so.
Hey, Arin. Thank you so much. And Kat, thank you for stepping in when I got shut off of my computer. I appreciate it. It was a wonderful presentation, Arin. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who joined. We had a pretty good crowd of about 60 people.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Hey, Arin and Sierra and Kat, do you want to stay on? And Burl too?
Will do.